for the people that do find it, it does come easy because they have the motivation. They think, looking around, man, any of these people could do what I do. And I think that every day, and I really think that's true. Mm-hmm. But how many of them have actually found the motivation to do it? And how many of them will find the motivation to do it? That's the real question.
Welcome, everyone, to T-Minus, presented by 321. I'm your host, Daniel Melick.
Jeff Malchek.
T-Raver.
T-Raver? Is that your nickname now?
Yep.
We're going to have cool nicknames like you? All right, so you're T-Raver from now on.
Yep, T-Raver.
Are you sure about this?
Yep, we're going with it.
All right. He's T-Raver now.
Do I have to come up with
No,
one?
you don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
No turbo?
Oh, yeah, you are Turbo. That is Turbo.
I am Turbo.
These are good podcast nicknames, I feel.
Turbo and T-Raver.
Yeah.
Actually, like that sounds like a mouthful, though. Turbo T-Raver, it's got too much T in it.
That's why you put Dan in the middle.
TDT.
Those are actually my initials.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Sorry, John, Janice. You're not included.
Yeah. Womp womp.
Yeah, anyway. I talked to our interns, I think it was yesterday, and we had a conversation because they're 19, 20 years old, and I was talking to them about how, we're in the age of information, and we are seeing a lot more younger people being successful. I guess your gauge of success, obviously, is subjective, but I guess for cultural terms or for even society, we're seeing, the Mark Zuckerbergs and Sean Parkers, and even younger than that, creating their own businesses and creating ideas and innovation and disruption in this space, especially in technology and, digital marketing. And it's a very interesting time because traditional education is kind of going out the window. And people are kind of learning on their own. There's so much information just from your phone alone, not even on a desktop anymore. From your phone, you can gather so much info on here and learn so much that, people can't keep up. So, I don't know. It was just a good conversation to have with them because they're in the middle of school and college. And I think they're opening their eyes to see, the direction, society's going and kind of education on themselves. I don't know. I find it interesting, and it's kind of also unknown territory because I don't think there's a time. You're a history major. I don't think there was a time where this has happened before in this fast of pace.
Could argue in the British Navy, a lot of kids were lieutenants, mostly because they were just easier to teach than just deckhands.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But is it because it was pushed on them or because of a
Desire
of new resource that it happens?
They were recruited. Orphans.
Right. Well,
brought on board.
That's a little different.
Yeah, no, I mean, you asked for the comparison and I delivered.
I don't think it's a fair comparison.
True.
Do you feel when, was it the Catholic Church that didn't allow people to read and then... That era?
I don't know. I don't think they ever disallowed reading. I mean, they made a book. It's pretty popular.
Yeah, but the only people that could read it were the priests. I'm almost positive in my 9th grade history class. I remember that.
Yeah, maybe there was some sex. Sex with a C and
okay.
a T.
I was like, I think there was a lot. That's how populations are created.
But no, I definitely feel where you're going with that. There is certainly a lot of focus towards becoming self-made. There's a lot of resources available out to people, and so it's really kind of wrecking the traditional way that people are learning business acumen. I feel that in decades previous, a lot of you were either in business because you were specially trained for it, you went to colleges and you went through all levels of education that you needed to, or it was because it was purely from experience. Either you moved up from a certain level to a place where you got managerial or ownership duties, or maybe it was a family businesses that you inherited, or maybe even something small that you started on your own that grew some.
Right, and
that. Not that those things don't happen now. It's just that
the excelled rate of because entrepreneurship and business owning and business creating is nothing new, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it just didn't happen overnight. I think it's the acceleration of volume of it rather than the idea of it, right? Because there's always going to be entrepreneurs, there's always going to be people that innovate and disrupt and create. That's how you just get new businesses, new ideas. It's just because of this boom of information that I think it becomes a little more tangible and easier to figure out.
Definitely easier to figure out, but I think it's more becoming a accepted path, right? You know, younger and younger and younger people are starting to start these huge businesses, you know, like you said, the Zuckerbergs of the world. But there's also like, I mean, I think I saw something of this kid who was like 11 years old at some school and came up with an idea for a med kit dispensary machine that would go on the side of like soccer fields and stuff like that, and then patented it. And now he's a millionaire because of it. You know, but it's just these small ideas, and if you're surrounded by the right people who want to like send you forward or whatever, you know, mentor you into starting your own business, then it's definitely possible at a younger age, you know. Because you could be motivated to hell and be 11 years old, but you don't have the resources to be able to figure it out yourself.
Right.
I can just picture an 11-year-old at the patent office filling out paperwork, you know, filling it out in crayon.
Exactly.
Do you know how patents work?
There's like an office, right?
And that everyone goes to fill out a patent?
Thomas Edison worked there. That's how he got most of his ideas.
Oh, okay.
Also a true story.
Great. Fantastic. Yeah, that's not how it happens.
Yeah.
LegalZoom.
Lots.
Not promoted or sponsored.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've talked before about how, and this is kind of a no-brainer, but how the internet and its current evolution has really accelerated the speed at which information is spread and disseminated, including resources, including tools for you to start your own business. So it's a lot easier now for you to have an idea, fill out that patent paperwork online, create a website, and get that business started. You know, either
in a week.
In a week. You know, you don't even have to have built anything yourself. You can just be using all these different tools. Like if you've got a product, you know, you can work with manufacturers like through Alibaba to have that product produced and stocked in Amazon warehouses, and then have that, you know, website build up and you know, market the fuck out of it online.
So obviously you're a lot younger. Mm-hmm. Where did that, I guess, motivation or spark in you to say, I want to learn a little more and I want to become a little better than the average?
Right.
I think that's a lot of people. That's the intangible thing, right? So there's all this information out there. It's that motivation, that self-motivation that kind of clicks in you. It's like, I'm better than
whatever I'm doing.
The par of whatever that is.
No, that was actually the turning point, which is funny because I remember the exact day that I decided to do something. And I had just left work. I was working downtown at a restaurant. Shitty night. Oh, my God. And, you know, I left super pissed off. And I was just thinking about it. And I remember it because I had a super hot girlfriend at the time who we just broke up. And she was going to do a marketing internship or whatever. And I was like, well, shit. Like, I'm serving tables. She's going off to, marketing internship or whatever. I was like, that sounds awesome. I was like, all right, I'm doing it. And then I just literally like put my head down, started looking for jobs, and literally 2 days later, I got a thing that I saw on Facebook from a friend of mine who was starting a business. And I immediately messaged him. I was like, screw it. Like, I'm risking it. I'm quitting my job. And then I took that customer service job, doing that, but just to get in the industry, started working in it, never looked back.
So a girl sparked your interest.
Pretty much, yeah, to be honest. I mean, it takes you getting to the lowest part to really realize, damn, this is not the life I want to live. And it could be way better, and I know I have the potential.
It's interesting, though, because what sparked you in marketing, though, right? So is it a coincidence? Because if it was finance, would you go into finance? If it was, say, nursing, would you become a nurse? You know what I mean? Like, what's obviously the things leading up to it, right, caused it. But what sparked the interest in this type of marketing, this dynamic of technology meets advertising, right?
Right.
Like that whole dynamic, I think, fits you well. Was it coincidence? Was it something that just passively sparked your interest and kind of motivated you to even pursue it more?
I think I definitely got a little lucky and really, really liking it once I started doing it. I've always had sort of a thing where I pick something up and pretty good at it, but then don't have the drive to get really good at it,
Right.
and then kind of drop off. But this was something that, like I said, I just had the motivation to do it. But maybe there was a little bit of competitive drive because, she was going to that marketing internship, and I was like, I'm going to do this better.
Right.
Well,
a chip on your shoulder always drives you a little further.
right, exactly.
So how's that chip doing now?
It's doing great.
It's doing great?
He's going good.
There you go. Okay. It's all that matters, right? As long as it's on your shoulder still.
We got to send her a gift basket.
Apparently,
Yeah,
I need
I
to.
should.
Yeah,
I should.
Let me know her email. I'll send her a very nice email thanking her.
Yeah.
What about you? How did you get started, Jeff?
Yeah, what I guess because even yours, I know your story, and yours is a little more formal because it was from a type of skill set that kind of drove you in this direction, rather than a female that's breaking up with you and you're waiting tables.
Yeah, I mean, the way I got started in digital advertising specifically was kind of through a mix of good luck and bad luck, I'd say. I don't want to say that I've always expressed an interest in advertising since I was a young kid or something, even though that was a story that my mom would love to tell.
Right.
But I did take a databasing class in high school. The school that I went to had a particular magnet program, and in it they had a lot of classes to get your certifications in, like, C++ or Photoshop or
Damn,
something
I wish
like
mine
that.
had that.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. The details of that program are kind of lost to history as it kind of disintegrated over the years. So I didn't exactly walk away with the certifications that I was hoping to, but I did take a databasing class just kind of for fun. I know that sounds weird in high school, but one of my classes was canceled. I asked a friend, what class he was taking during that particular slot where I had to kind of fill it, and he mentioned this databasing class, so I went to check it out. It was all about learning SQL, which is a databasing language, and building queries and getting information. And the whole idea of that class was by the end of the semester, we were going to take the actual Oracle certification to get our SQL level 1 certification. I think there's like 3 levels essentially. And this test has like a 70% fail rate. Fail rate. So our grade wasn't dependent on it, and actually I don't think anybody in the class actually ended up passing. We're just high school students and everything. I think it was the first time that our particular teacher was teaching the class, and he was very great and everything. So I don't blame him for anything. I think just learning SQL was really hard, especially for a high school student who wasn't really expecting, to learn all that. So I kind of went off to college. I bounced around a couple majors. I had always had a very fascinating interest in history. So I kind of was knocking out my history classes while taking a couple electives here and there. And eventually I ended up taking a advertising class, which kind of sparked my interest and made me take a couple more advertising classes. I got involved with Quotes, which was the public relations club on campus at the time. I think Ad Club was started at a later date, but I wasn't really involved with that very much. And so I started going to events like with Ad2 and with Quotes and FPRA and stuff, and started meeting people and learning more. And eventually I was like, oh man, this is a really cool field.
But I find it interesting that you drove into data, right? It kind of sparked your skill set. But your pure passion was history, which isn't history or in data kind of connected.
You try explaining rational decision making for your education to an 18-year-old.
Right. But I'm just saying, 2020.
Yeah. 2020, I probably should have doubled down on data earlier.
No, but
Me
I'm just
too.
saying, right,
Totally.
but I'm just saying that data and history kind of go hand in hand, because isn't data just the history of what happened?
I mean, shit, I wish I would have thought of that.
It's a cool story, right?
Cool story. Yeah, no, it's definitely a cool story. That's actually way better than the story that I just told.
So I'm going to cut everything out.
Right.
And I'm going to let you re-say exactly that. Go.
What did you want me to say?
I don't know.
I'm bad at directions. No, but anywho, so after getting really involved with all of the organizations and everything, I just started applying for internships through the intern pursuit. which was kind of like a job fair for interns specifically, like in the advertising PR world. And so I had one or two with like nonprofits, and then eventually I got an agency internship at Y Partnership, which is now MMGY. And while I was there, I remember one of the directors explaining to me, it's like, we really don't know what to do with you, so we're just going to kind of push you a little bit towards digital and paid search just because we don't have anyone on staff to do it. And I was like, yeah, that seems interesting. I opened up Excel and started kind of fidgeting around with it, discovered pivot tables, and I was like, shit, this is just kind of like a visual way of building queries, you know, that where I don't have to write SQL. That's kind of how my digital career got started, was essentially through lack of better things to do.
Oh, okay. That's anticlimactic. Very cool. No, I think that just shows you from our landscape and from the industry that I don't think anyone had that vision that young, because people in our age, it's a voyage. There was unknown territory, so you couldn't say this is where I want to go because it didn't exist.
Oh yeah, there was no digital department. There was one person on staff who was overworked with all the paid search campaigns that they were running, which we weren't making enough money off of anyway, because the margins for digital were so low at the time, that they just really needed an intern's assistant with, you know, building campaigns, uploading campaigns, making optimizations. It was way before rules and bidding strategies and shared budgets. It was
all manual,
very manual, laborious work, paid search. But I mean, it changed in just a really short time too.
Mine's a little different. It's more of the mentality I feel I always had when I was young. Is I was the kid that kind of took everything apart and then tried to put it back together to try to figure out how it works. I was always into technology because of that, because it allowed me to do that in a digital manner where I physically wasn't breaking anything anymore.
I have a friend that's a lot like that. Yeah.
Right. So I used to take apart my toys, come back, put them back together, and parents got pissed. But now I can, manipulate a page, test it, do trial and error. I learned everything trial. I learned Photoshop. I learned Dreamweaver 1.0, literally by getting software not so legal ways and just playing with it, right? And just clicking on things. Oh, what does this do if I turn it up? Or what does this do if I put this in here?
Best way
How
to
does
learn.
it work, right? Just trial and error, figuring it out, because I always had that curiosity, right? And I think that's what sparked my interest in technology in general and marketing, really. So I felt, how can I manipulate something or change something and it affects this? So fast forward, a lot of retail jobs, a lot of crappy retail jobs, and a friend of mine was a club promoter, and I started getting into that. I know it sounds like way off, but to understand the psychology of how to get people into a club and how to market to them and advertise them, not in the more standard ways, I found it very interesting from a social level and from a creative ad level. I didn't know that at 19, 20 years old. I couldn't even get into the club myself, but I love the idea of the creative aspect of it.
They let you promote it, but they didn't let you in.
That's how they get you.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy?
That's how they get you.
That's how they get you.
Well, I might have was in there, but I guess the statute of limitations allows me to say that now.
There you go.
See Dan. Yo, dude, let me get in for the last hour, bro.
Come on, man.
Come on, let me in.
Why I got to pay cover?
Yo, I got like 20 girls in tonight. Come on, bro.
But just that idea sparked my interest, to be honest with you. So add that with like the understanding of technology, I kind of went hand in hand and drove me in that direction. Like I was the kid on AOL profiles. You do not remember this, but AOL profiles, like changing and manipulating profile colors and fonts and adding images. And then obviously MySpace came around and I went ham on it. Just that idea, when I was like 19, 20 years old by then, figuring those things out, I always sparked my interest. And then I got a business admin degree because I didn't care. And it was easy and everything's a business, so it makes sense for me.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine started a tech company when the iPhone apps were launched in 06, 07. And I was just like, this is really interesting to me. I don't know why, but something drove me to really dive deep in how to market technology. And that kind of sparked my interest, got internships, got, small-time gig jobs, and then kind of grow into the agency life. But I think it was the mentality of it, and that's why I'm kind of going back to you is we have all this information, but there's always going to be that something that sparked in you, right? You have the mentality and the hustle, you just didn't know where to drive it to, right?
Vision.
Right. So, and it was hard to have that vision when it doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Like, you can say, oh, I want to be an NBA player because there's an NBA, but if you were like, I love round balls and, wait, hold on. Okay. Yeah, that's a little different.
There's like egg-shaped balls too.
Yeah, there are. No, I'm not going there, but I like basketball, but there's no NBA, so how do you have a vision to play for the NBA if there was no NBA, right?
That's the point. You have to think of it.
Correct. And I guess until it kind of came into fruition, you kind of then could focus whatever that was in you to drive to that direction.
Right. I don't know. The only thing that kills me about growing up was this, just that I was never pushed to go and think about things. It was very much on my own. I was very, very independent growing up.
Right.
I had made my own friends, didn't really hang out with my siblings too much or anything like that, but there was never that push to, you need to stick with something, you need to get good at it, that I really, really wish I had. Because I feel like you could have started something a lot earlier.
Agreed, but at the same time, I think at that age, it's testing. How do you know what you want to stick to and you like?
Right. Well, that's the point. Is to just start trying things. Get out there.
Oh, so it's more
see
of the
something
trying rather than sticking and doing. Because if you stick with data analysis and you're like, I really hate this, but you know
Right.
what? I picked it, so I'm gonna stick with it.
Right. Well, at that young of an age, there's trial and error.
That's what I'm saying. That's what
there's no consequence.
Exactly. No consequence. I think that's the best age to say, I don't know what I want to do, but I'm gonna try everything until I say I really like this on an independent level. Meaning, no one has to tell me. I'm thinking about it at night. Waking up in the morning, I'm thinking about it because it's something that's driving whatever that's in me, that the passion, the honing of vision to say, this is where I want to go, right? Now, because as of right now, you're like, I feel I have the hustle, I have the motivation. It's just not focused anywhere.
Right.
But once you figure that out, but again, back that up. I'm talking to professors at UCF, and they're like, kids don't have that, though.
Exactly.
A lot of kids...
The motivation is the problem.
Don't have the motivation or the understanding of critical thinking to determine that. It's always very robotic.
Or the drive to be critical thinking.
But, kind of backing that up, so the conversation started is... Or our conversation started is that age of information, that people are becoming more successful now quicker, right? By volume.
Through independent learning.
Through independent learning. But I'm also hearing from professors, kids don't have critical thinking. Kids don't have the motivation and drive to understand how to be self-taught.
So what's the truth there?
That's what I'm saying. Is it because of volume overload on the right side of the bell curve is the only reason, but the bulk of the bell curve is still growing in masses in a detrimental way? You get what I'm saying? Like the volume here of the outliers are just doing things quicker and faster, but the bulk is still being the bulk.
So what you're saying is the higher percentage of the bell curve is so successful that it's making the latter part of the bell curve harder to catch up?
Not in that sense. It's the bell curve is still the same. It's just
widening slowly.
It's widening a little slower, I feel, and the percentage of success on the outline of the right side of the bell curve, right, is not growing faster, but getting there faster. Mm. Because the only way you know an outlier really is by a success rate of some sort.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just by the volume. So instead of taking 15 years, I might take 3.
To be honest, we said that this generation is one of the largest generations of, young entrepreneurs. And because of that, I think that people are now starting to grow up with a lot of more, entrepreneurs as parents, as friends, friends of the family and stuff like that. So they're seeing that and being pushed. So those outliers are being pushed by other outliers, which has a ripple effect and is starting to grow that bell curve.
Because they feel they can be more.
Absolutely. You see it more
Right.
often, you start to become more like it.
And
Okay.
I don't think it's just entrepreneurs. I think it's also the capacity to which a lot of businesses have grown. I think, I mean, I wish I had the data to back this up, but I feel like a couple decades ago, some of the largest institutions, largest businesses were mostly in the financial sector.
Right.
Somebody correct me in the comments. But having changed now with technology being the center focus and information being the center focus of a lot of businesses, you see businesses like Apple, you see businesses like Facebook and Google and even Yahoo and /Verizon with hundreds of thousands of employees each. So only the best people are working there, or at least they do their best to cultivate a culture in which they're only hiring the best people. So it's a lot more common. For instance, I was just at a party this past weekend talking with a friend who's going over to Amazon to work on Alexa.
Oh, that's cool.
Right?
That's pretty cool.
Right?
Right, and that's what I'm saying is I think it is interesting. I'm not saying that the outliers are all entrepreneurs or business creators. I'm saying they are the best of what they do. They are successful in what they do. Those are the outliers. The middle it's the mediocre, right? Those are the people that are stable or sustaining in some type of way.
Mediocre sounds like a mean word.
Sorry. Average. Stable, right? I'll say stable, right? Okay. So that's the stability. The outliers are the ones that kind of reach a little farther for their growth rate for there's a little more for success. And that's what I'm saying. I want to really hone in and say it's not just entrepreneurs, it's anyone that's very successful in their field.
I will also say this, that I think over the years, a lot of the good ideas that are directly have to do with like increasing technology and coming up with brand new things, have most of the part been thought of,
Right.
So when people are coming to try and think of ideas, they have to take a lot more risks nowadays, right? So people get further and further out on that to be able to be successful at all, because you have to take those higher risks than you did 20 years ago, right?
Right, because it becomes more common.
Yeah, and it becomes more of a necessity.
Right.
Like you literally can't nowadays, because a lot of the good things have been thought of, whatever, you really have to hustle, I think, a lot harder than you did back in the day if you had a really good idea.
Okay. I understand that, and
I mean, if you disagree with me, please say.
No, and I agree with that, but they always say nothing's new under the sun. So
Right.
It's not about really creating new ideas. It's just evolving into something different. So I feel that the people that really are honing in are the ones that are going to grow from the evolution of and not just create. So
Okay, I could see
you
that.
see what I'm saying? So it's not I created Facebook. Facebook came from something else. It actually birthed from MySpace, Friendster, Black Planet, Asian Avenue, blah, blah, blah. All these micro ideas of social networks. So it wasn't like they created it. They just evolved it. Google wasn't the first search engine, right? They had tons of them. It's just the evolution of it. So that's never going to stop, and that's what it's the most difficult thing is. It's not like people are going to run out of ideas because it's just evolving on top of it based on the behavior that society creates naturally, right? So from a behavior standpoint, we evolve. So that means the technology evolves, which means there's no such thing as a stopping point for technology. That's all I mean by that. So,
100%. Yeah.
So I don't think it becomes harder. I think it just becomes actually probably a little easier because information's
More
out
tools.
there, more tools to use.
Okay, I'll agree with easier but harder.
I'm not gonna say
I'll meet you
easier.
halfway.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say easier because I think that's
Right.
That's
It's just more available, and you just
Correct.
have more tools. You don't have to spend your day at the library.
correct.
Yeah.
It's just streamlined, I'll
Right.
say. So, but to kind of piggyback off this entire conversation, it's because of that great success, right? And I think a lot of successful people, because they garner success, and again, success is measured in various ways, based on individuals, based on industry, based on whatever the public feels is successful. That people that are younger, that are gaining success, even from, not even from like the outlier level, is detrimenting in some ways when it comes to psychology, because stuff like imposter syndrome comes up, that people that achieve something so fast feel that it was, I want to say too easy, but it came a little more natural to them, that they don't feel that they are true to whatever industry they're in.
Deserving.
So they're deserving of whatever they achieved. Right? So it's just like, it came natural to me. Does that make it easy? Because people say it's so hard to get to the position I'm at or level I'm at. So they start questioning themselves. I think that becomes a little more realistic nowadays, because the outliers are becoming more successful at a faster pace.
Mm-hmm. Well, the outliers are becoming less outliers and becoming part of the curve.
They're always part of the curve. It's just,
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
where the line is. Less outliery. Statistics.
Right.
So to say something, though, we were talking about earlier about finding your motivation, that being the driver. I think that for the people that do find it, it does come easy because they have the motivation. They think, looking around, man, any of these people could do what I do. And I think that every day, and I really think that's true. Mm-hmm. But how many of them have actually found the motivation to do it? And how many of them will find the motivation to do it? That's the real question.
So you're looking at it more from the middle part rather than
I think everyone
the issue of.
I think everyone has the intelligence to do what I do. For the most part. Most people, everyone in this office probably has the intelligence to do what I do. But I think a lot of people that I meet, people ask me all the time, what do I do? Stuff like that. We go to intern pursuit, they come up to us. I think that a lot of those people could do it if they just sat down and did it. I have a friend who's trying to start a business. He has a great idea. Paid like $1,000 for the domain for this thing. Spent tons of money on it, hired a web developer, is doing it. Comes to actually inputting the data for it, doesn't want to do it at all. And it'll take 20 hours probably to input all this data of just sitting there and typing. But that's what it takes being like a small business owner, an entrepreneur, is just the motivation to do it. And a lot of it doesn't even require the intelligence. It's data entry. It's just actually sitting down and getting it done.
That comes down to, I think, idea versus execution, right? Everyone says I have an idea, but the execution is the hardest part. 99% of people won't execute what they think, right? So I guess you say I'm not smarter than people. I just can out-hustle people.
Yeah.
The thing that's controllable the most right now, some things do come a little more natural than others. That's just, from a mental standpoint, some people understand English more than math, right? Like, that's just genetics.
Right.
Now, can they learn math? Yes, obviously, but some things come a little more natural based on how they learn, right? So saying that, anyone can do this job that you do in this office, it's true.
Right.
But the input they have to put into it versus the input you have to put into it versus Jeff has to versus, Tyler has to, it all differentiates based on their learning curve of how they learn, what they learn, and kind of the logic it takes to learn it.
Right.
So, yes, someone could learn and do exactly what you do, but it might take a lot longer and a lot harder hill to climb.
Right.
That it took you a lot less.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're not talking about like the NBA or, the NFL where you have to be a physical specimen and that's just biology at that point. But this is about, I think that's the interesting thing about technology and digital and, advertising is it can be a little taught, even though I can't 100% agree with you that everyone can do it, because there is a thing that you need to have, and that's critical thinking. And I personally feel, and even talking to the professors, is saying that kids don't have that because they were never instilled in it. So it's a very, very bad habit to try to break if they cannot think that way.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do essentially with your perceived value, not just how you value your education and your experience and your hustle and your drive, but also how your peers kind of value it. And I think that's kind of what makes imposter syndrome so prevalent, is that it is kind of hard to quantify those things. It's really hard to say that, well, I worked, and watched 12 hours of Linda videos, but knowing that somebody else, either, in your team, in your company, or maybe even a peer in your industry is watching 40 hours of Linda videos,
Well, that's more quantifiable. I don't care about that. It's about the success of what you put out of those Linda videos.
What
right?
you take from them.
It's what you take from them and how do you apply it.
Which again, is very hard to quantify.
It is hard to quantify. I think that's where the issue lies as well, is because now you have to try to quantify yourself, your success rate versus the standard, versus your peers, versus the industry, versus society, and say it's not measured. It's not like a monetary thing where it's like how much money you have, okay, versus the 1% and 99%. If that's how you're basing it, sure. But if it's basing on a skill set and achievement versus who, what are you comparing it to determine if you are successful in this industry rather than monetary gain?
And yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it comes from a place where either your environment, or your employer are in somewhere in that Venn diagram of those three things, reach a level of ambiguity into the value that you bring to a company. For instance, I worked at an agency a number of years ago, which was a very millennial-focused kind of hipster agency. Big dev house with a penthouse office, ping pong table, unlimited snacks, like the whole shebang. And essentially, in my time there, I met a whole bunch of really smart, really motivated people who were going above and beyond in every sense of the word, in their daily work, in their personal work. Each of them had their own side hustles. Each of them had some sort of personal project they were working on or doing, or some sort of goal or ambition that they knew. And in working there, I was in a position where my role and my contribution to the team was kind of left ambiguous. I think, I was brought on as kind of a, we need this type of person, but we really don't know what for. And I think, in the time that I was spending there, I reached this level of an ambiguity into the purpose. Like, we work in media, so we're very cognizant of how much value we're bringing to a company, because we can see that skimmed off the top of the media budget. Correct. But what happens when you only have one client? What happens when you're
right? And I think
when you're brought in on to consult on a lot of projects, but there's no dollar value.
Right, and I think there's
no hours.
Well, I think that comes down to one, I guess, the peers around you that can quantify whatever you're doing, and the culture. But also, I think imposter syndrome is more of an inward thing than an outward thing.
Of course, right? Yeah, but it's not.
But you're saying those things
stacked. That.
But those things stacked up to create the imposter syndrome in you during that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I was looking around at all my peers and how much cooler they were, how much more motivated they were, how much they got done, and how much they could speak to what they got done. And then I went back to my desk and I looked at my workload. I looked at all the projects I was contributing to. I looked at all my Basecamp threads and everything. And I attend meetings where essentially I would just kind of twiddle my thumbs, and nobody would acknowledge medium and acknowledge marketing in the room, not really ask us what we needed or how we could contribute.
Right, and I think there's a time period that everyone needs to understand that. I had this idea that if I'm not wealthy by 25 and entrepreneur and business owner and being successful, I failed. But there's a growing period that everyone needs to go through, and I think this is where the younger generation really needs to understand this, is the patience of experience is invaluable, right? So that's where imposter syndrome cannot live, is the growth of that, right? So everyone thinks, hey, I can go to this one job in a year. I feel I know everything, so now I'm going to go on my own and be an entrepreneur or be successful and do whatever I want to do because I'm so smart. Well, just statistically, that's not the case, because that experience, that drive, that understanding of learning is a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? So if you understand that it's a marathon, then you're learning, and that's not imposter syndrome, and it can't live there because your mentality is, I need to become better. I need to learn more. I need to get as much information as possible for the longest period of time, because that's what's going to set me up for success, right? I'm gonna build the people around me, and I'm gonna have the input of people around me that can help me get there. So it's the understanding and the mentality saying, I don't know everything, and I need to step back from my arrogance to really kill the imposter syndrome like mentality that you have, and say, I'm going to take this time, this 4 or 5 years, and learn as much as possible, because then I can solidify myself based on experience, based on knowledge, based on even quantifiable numbers, to say I know what I'm doing now, right? 5, 10 years, whatever it is. Like I when I was 22, 23 years old, I literally thought in a year I got experience. I know what I'm doing. I know I'm smarter than everyone here. I can do it, right? And now I look back, hindsight's 2020, and say, yeah, I didn't
know anything.
I knew a small blip in a very big, very evolving space. So it comes down to how to kind of combat imposter syndrome and not make you feel insecure about what you know and what you don't know is, I'd say Kendrick Lamar song is be humble and sit down, because it's very true.
Yeah.
It is.
I think you missed a couple lyrics.
Just be humble and sit down, because that's what it is. It's the experience of patience and saying, I don't know everything, but I want to absorb as much as possible through the experiences that I have, because that's the best way to learn, for one. And two, I think that builds your confidence, saying, I have those notches under my belt, and I went through the fire to get to the other side.
I think the hardest thing about imposter syndrome is recognizing when it's happening to you.
Again, it's very, because it's an insecurity. So it's hard to reflect and look at yourself and be like, yeah, I have that. Most people don't. Like the hardest part is saying you have a problem until you kind of go past it, and hopefully you do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't see it while you're in it. So like for you had to get out of it through, one, getting out of a culture, and two, growing through experience to see the value that lies.
Yeah, no, I mean, the biggest motivating factor that kind of helped me out of that stage in my life was the idea that, where I wasn't permanent. There's always the opportunity to grow, and always the opportunity to start again, to have a fresh start at a new business, where in my case, it was all about my internal sense of value and my perceived value. They're both low,
right?
Because I mean,
right.
All businesses and all offices have their own issues, and they're constantly trying to fix those issues. But at this point in time in my life, when I was experiencing this, I was in this stage where I wasn't sure what I was doing, and people were looking at me going like, "What are you doing?" So I think the biggest way to fight that is to face that hard question in the mirror and ask yourself, what are you doing? What do you want? In my case, it was like, okay, so what I want from me is I want a change of pace. I want to be brought into an environment where my particular skill set is the focal point of the business.
And then you can know whether if you're actually successful in it because it's focused on.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I was kind of, I was in a dev house doing,
marketing work.
Marketing, right. Mostly analytics stuff, which, right,
as
you mentioned, anyone can learn, anyone can do. and it was just a matter of doing it. So I had this perceived notion that my contribution wasn't necessarily met up to my salary, and so it was all about recognizing that fact and focusing on, okay, so what do I want? What do I want out of my career, myself, my expectations for my business?
Right.
That I work for, because like all those things are factors into your perceiving your own self-worth.
So we all took a test. I don't think how accurate it was, but we all scored
7 questions.
Yeah, we all scored low. Apparently none of us have it, and none of us have Ebola either, which is good. That was a joke, taking the test online anyway.
The test you need, you can't take online, Dan.
I know. I came actually from the doctors today, and I'm clean. Yay.
Good to hear.
No, but you took the test, and obviously you passed, or you passed.
So
out of 100...
Out of 100, what was your score?
I got 40.
I got 39.
I got 33.
Right, so you're very arrogant. I got it.
Isn't that funny?
I'm only 1/3 arrogant, okay?
Yeah. So obviously up to 100 is when you have imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Anything below, or anything, I guess, below 50 is you're self-aware. Mm-hmm. So for you, I guess, obviously you're younger than us. You're 24 now, right?
Yep, 2 weeks.
Right. So do you feel when you were 20, where was your head at?
That's when I was still working at restaurants, man.
So you didn't have imposter syndrome. It was just, I don't know what I'm doing.
I will say that, it's funny because now we do a lot of math, basically.
Right.
It's all a lot of formulas and stuff like that. So I'm not doing like long division or anything. But growing up and going through high school and stuff like that, I hated math. But it was really only because I just didn't care about anything. And that was the big...
And yeah, but I think that's also, and I had a really good math teacher in high school, because what he taught me was it's not about the mathematics part of it. It's not about he's like, you're not going to use calculus on your regular day. It's about the logic and rationale that
the
it
critical
takes
thinking.
to have critical thinking and learning, right? Learning how to problem solve. That's what I'm teaching you. So if a teacher actually switched your mentality of how to look at things and say, this is the reason why I'm having you do this, do you feel that would have changed your
absolutely
your
and
mindset?
This is why public education has failed us, but that's a topic for another conversation.
Yes, it is. That's why I appreciated him. He's a very hard teacher, but the idea behind it of why I get. And that's why I think pushed me to be curious. Like, it's being curious and having imagination start when you're young. There's a certain time in life where it just dies for a lot of people. But the ones that stay curious, that always ask why, that always have the imagination to think beyond the box, are the ones that are the outliers, I feel. So when the professor tells me, well, majority of my students aren't critical thinkers, I'm like, well, one, I feel it's because of the education they're getting when they're young, but two, it's they lose that curiosity. Now, is it just instilled in you that you had the curiosity later on, but it just wasn't honed into math? Did you feel that you're curious about things, you just didn't have it like focused?
I always, I always knew that I kind of had some sort of I was very good at things, picked them up very, very quickly, still do, once you have some sort of, like we talked about, idea on what, we do as a job, it's a lot easier to pick other things up.
Right.
But, just picking up random skills throughout my life, I got good at them very quickly, but then, like I said, would drop off, right? So I didn't have that motivation or push or curiosity, as you put it, to keep going on with it. So that, for me, was the big problem.